Hey guys, I'm going to give you a bit of a rundown on how to get the caliper and everything off and how to set it up. So I've kind of done all this, so I'm going to pull it apart and show you how to do it. Okay. Basically you've got to take the wheel off, and if you don't know how to do that, then I would suggest you stop this video now and call the local Ford dealer and get them to deal with it, because it's going to be way too advanced for you. Right, I don't mean to sound condescending, but that's pretty much the truth. So you've got the wheel off. I'm going to go through everything you need to do to get this sorted. Okay, so we're going to be changing the rotor. Alright, so we're going to need to take this caliper off. There's this caliper here, there's a cradle here that's bolted to the axle, and this is the caliper here, and it slides backwards and forwards. It actually centralises on a couple of pins that run inside this housing here, one at the top and one at the bottom. Now when you put your foot on the brake, there's a piston inside here and there, and that pushes against the inside caliper and pulls this kind of claw looking thing on the caliper, and so basically both pads act together and pull on the disc and stop it. Alright, and when it releases the pressure and it frees up. Now the handbrake system's quite a complex little setup. It's got a spring and a cable. A spring at the top returns it back to its normal position, and a cable, and it's also got an auto adjuster, so every time you pull the handbrake on, as your brakes wear, it will move a little bit to actually take up the slack, and that piston will come out slowly but surely until there's no adjustment left, and then all of a sudden your handbrake starts coming to the top of its travel. Alright, so when it starts coming to the top of the travel, if you put new brakes in and it's still coming to the top of the travel, then you've got to replace the rotor. Okay, now looking at a rotor, if you're getting brake juddering or anything along those lines, you can either skim the rotor, get it machined, but there's a minimum thickness you can go, but you need to actually get them to run it, whoever's doing the machine work, get them to run it up on a lathe or centering tool, and check it for true run out, so it's not warped, because you don't want it warped, or when you put your foot on the brake you'll feel it through the pedal like that, or judder like that. Okay, the other problems you can get is squealing, screeching, etc, etc. The screeching, it's got little screech plates here. There's one there and one on the other side, and what happens is, as your brakes wear, this little screech plates have got a little tang that goes through. It'll touch the brake. It doesn't actually cause any damage initially, but it's a warning to tell you that it needs to be done immediately, you know, within the next 200-300 kilometers at the most, or you'll start wearing a groove in your rotor. Okay, so you want to be looking for cracks in your rotor. If it's got a big lip on it where it's worn, I've got another one over there, but I'm not going to bother showing you at the moment. So we're going to crack into it. So the first thing we need to do is get, you're going to need some tools. You're going to need I've got a 4-pound hammer here. You're going to need a 13mm ring open end spinner or wrench. You're going to need a pair of long nose pliers, a small hammer, and yeah, basically, yeah, I've got a axle stand here, scissor jack. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to undo this bolt here and this bolt down here, and that will allow the caliper to slide out. Okay, so we'll do that. You'll need a 13mm for that, and you also need a 13mm. Once you get this caliper off, you'll need 13mm to get the actual caliper, the retainer off. Okay, and there's a bit of maintenance we need to do on that, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. Right, so we'll grab a 13mm. Right, and these will be quite tight. So what I normally do is I get my 4-pound hammer and give it a decent whack. Because I've had them undone, they're actually quite loose. Well, not loose, but... And what you'll find as you start undoing it, because it hasn't been undone before, this one has, and I've put copper coat on it, this little the floating pin, it will spin. So what you've got to do is get your long nose pliers and hold it like so, and if you can't hold it with your long nose pliers, get a large screwdriver and wedge it between the rotor and the plate like that and move it, okay, and it will come around and lock up. So we'll get those off. Then we'll take the top one off, and you can just wiggle it to you can either use a wrench, or you can use a socket if you wish, a ratchet and socket, but I find it much just as easy. And you just support it in your hand, and then it'll sit there, and then you want to pull it away, you want to give it a bit of a wiggle, like as much as you can, and then pull it out of the way, okay, and just let it sit on here like so. Now while we've got this off, what you're going to have to do is compress this piston in here. Okay, now this piston here has also got an adjuster on it. There's two like notches in it, and those notches line up with the notch on the other side. There's a notch on the other other brake pad here, disc pad, and that notch lines up with that notch there. So when this adjustment happens, because every time you apply the handbrake, this rotates out and it moves, this adjusters out, and I'll show you how that works just to demonstrate. You don't need to pull this off, but I'm just going to demonstrate. Just take the spring off. Okay, just take that spring off. Is every time this when the brakes wear, every time you pull the handbrake up, if the brake's wearing past a certain point, this will adjust up. So what happens is I'll get a pair of normal pliers and I'll just demonstrate that. So let's just say your brakes are wearing. As you pull the cable, your handbrake cable up, which is this cable here, as you pull it up, see how it pushes the piston out, and then every time you come backwards and forwards, it'll come further and further out. See? Okay, that's just that's probably about 12-18 months of wear right there. That's pretty worn out. So what happens is when you have got worn pads and worn rotor, and that's sitting out like that, you might have that piston compressed back as far as you can get it, like you've got your calipers or a G-clamp and clamped on and pulled that back, but you still can't get it onto the new shoes. So like, see, I can't get that on there. So what I need to do is you get a pair of long nose pliers, I get a bit of CRC and give that a little bit of a spray in around here, and then get your long nose pliers and anti-clockwise turn that back in like so, as far as it'll go. It takes a fair bit of force, and then you want to get that little notch so it lines up with 3 o'clock. Or 6 o'clock as it was looking through this view here, but basically straight up and down like that, because it wants to line up with that pin there, because that pin will stop the whole thing from rotating around, because if it rotates around it won't adjust. Okay, so you got to line it up. Alright, So that's that part.